Hello everyone, good day to all of you. Wanted to give a review today of the Maxim Defense MDX 510, as I have right here. I've got about 1,000 rounds on this, have had it for about a month now, so I feel like it's a good time to actually talk about it. Now this review is specifically going to be on their URG, the upper, just the upper. The reason that I did that is because this is my SBR lower, so kind of less complicated with paperwork that way. And also their lower is a non-ambi. It's a billet. It kind of has some cool features going for it, but it is non-ambi, and I do prefer ambi lowers whenever possible, which this one is. So that's why I didn't go with their lower. But as for the rest of the review, how I'm going to talk about this is to just go from the back of the rifle and go forward and just talk about every part from there. But first I did want to talk about the caliber options that you have on here. This one in specific I chose to get in their 5.56, which is cool that they actually mark which caliber this is for on the left side of the receiver. So if you do happen to have a lot of receivers like this and you don't want to potentially mix up and, for example, put like a 300 blackout round into a 5.56 or vice versa or whatever happens, pretty easy to avoid that because they do come marked very nicely laser engraved there. So when you first receive the MDX 510 upper receiver group, in the box, of course, you will get the actual upper itself with everything installed. You will get a test fired case just to show that this functioned. And you will also receive a Duramag, which is pretty cool. I didn't realize that. The one I got, I don't know if they'll always send it, but the one I got was a 30-round mag, which it works. It's not like the fanciest mag in the world, but it works fine. No issues there. And they'll also send it with lubricant as well as one of their hand stops, which has a pretty cool, actually like a spring-loaded M-lock design, which is interesting. Makes it easier to install and presumably to uninstall as well. I didn't go with that. I didn't install it on mine. I prefer on this short of a length to have an actual foregrip, so I'm using a kind of a stubby one right here, just so I have a little bit more purchase against my hand than just a hand stop. But you could put the hand stop just right up here if you're worried about, I don't know, slipping your hand in front of the muzzle or something like that. As for the price, at least as of recording this, the MDX 510 is just a little bit under $1,400. If you wait for a sale, it does seem like these go on sale pretty frequently. I got mine towards the end of summer when they were having a sale on them and was able to get about $140 off that way. So it's not a bad price already. Just kind of wait for a sale is what I would recommend. So starting very first on the back here with the charging handle, this ships with a Radian Raptor. Note that this is not the suppressed variant of the charging handle, and they actually don't warranty suppressor use. I'm going to talk about suppressor use with this later, but do keep that in mind. Moving now forward to the upper receiver itself. This is probably, to be honest, actually the main reason why I picked this up, because it is such an interesting upper. This is a HK 416 spec upper. What that means is, so it's not an actual 416 upper. You can't pop in a 416 piston and all that stuff and run this like that, but it does have the HK height rail. So where your normal AR, you can see where this scallops down right here. Where a normal AR will just go straight across, the HK goes upwards. The reason for that on an actual 416 is because it needs room for the piston, because it sits a little higher than a direct gas impingement's gas tube does. But on here, I'm not sure if they did it just for more rigidity, or if it's maybe because it makes it compatible with 416 handguards, which are excellent. But I will get to that here in just a sec. The next part I wanted to talk about, though, moving more forward, is just the forward assist and the dust cover here. You can see nothing really special about these. These are both mil spec, totally normal. If you do want to remove the dust cover, one thing on that is, so I'm getting out my actual 416 clone here for comparison. So on an actual HK 416 or MR 5.56, whatever, they all work the same way. The dust cover, it's not a mil-spec dust cover, but more importantly, what I wanted to talk about is the axle that it rotates on. If you want to remove the dust cover, you can actually just take it out the rear. However, although the Maxim Defense upper right here is HK spec with the rail height, all the rest of this is just kind of a nice looking billet upper with its own kind of weird quirks to it. So there's no way to get the axle out the rear. Here you can see it's just totally sealed off. So if you want to change out the dust cover, which I kind of do want to, because I do prefer like the HK polymer ones, or just really any polymer dust covers in general, I do prefer them. But you will need to take the barrel nut off to do that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the bolt carrier group. So a lot of the components on this upper on the MDX 510 are really, really nice. But the bolt carrier group, I would say, is actually a very, very weak point. It's pretty bad. So when I very first got this MDX 510, whenever I get any new rifle or gun, handgun, pistol, whatever, however you're going to set this up for yourself, I always clean everything, and the bolt carrier had a few issues. So starting out, let me show you this pretty close up. So back here, look at that right there. You can see it in the sunlight. This is really, really rough. You can actually see the machining lines on here, and I can very, very much feel them. It's pretty rough there, so it's going to attract more carbon, going to be a little bit harder to clean. Overall, this is just kind of your average, just a mil-spec bolt carrier. And what I mean by mil-spec is just, you know, it doesn't have any special features going for it. It does not ship, by the way, with this Lantac cam pin. I tend to put this in all my uppers. It just has a normal, again, mil-spec cam pin. But another point of concern that I had with this, so when I do get all my new rifles and handguns, as I was kind of saying earlier, I do clean them. I make sure that everything's all good, just in case there's any kind of crud in there left over from the factory, or, you know, grease, whatever. There usually is stuff that you'll want to clean out. So when I disassembled this bolt, popped out the cotter pin right here, of course, and this is actually an insanely tight fit. I actually broke the original cotter pin. This is a K&S replacement one that I put in here. So what happened with the original cotter pin is popped it out like normal. It was a little tight, I noticed, when I was popping out, but I thought, okay, you know, it's fine. It's brand new. So cleaned everything up. There was just a bit of oil on it. For your information, by the way, you don't really need to clean this too much when you do get it. I would probably just spray it down with some lubricant and call it a day. At least with mine, it was fine. But this cotter pin, when I went to put it back in, it would not go in. So I was trying to force it, and it is my own fault that I broke it ultimately, because I was trying to force it and then I bent it out of shape and just permanently mangled it, and I decided it would just be easier to get a new cotter pin than to just try to bend that old one back into shape. But it really should not be that tight. I have several other AR bolt carriers, and I've never had one that fits as tightly as this. This is abnormally tight, and it will cause issues, certainly, when you are trying to reassemble it after cleaning it. And this does really disincentivize me from cleaning it. Now, this K&S one did fit, but still, I don't really want to take it apart because it is still a very tight fit. I nearly forgot to talk about the barrel nut. So this is also kind of interesting. This is not an HK416 compatible barrel nut, so you couldn't take one off of a HK and put it onto here. Rather, what they have in here is actually very, very interesting. You can actually remove this barrel nut with a buffer tube wrench. It follows the same sort of notches as you have on your buffer tube on the castle nut, but just keep in mind, because it isn't exactly like the actual 416 barrel nuts, some of your aftermarket handguards may not fit the best. I'll find out when I actually do put a different one on here, and that's a good point for me to talk about. The reason that I want to replace this handguard is because I want to suppress this. So they do not warranty suppressor usage. I believe I did mention that at the start of the video, which is unfortunate because this type of gun, I really do want to suppress it. And I did try it with a suppressor. It works completely fine. I'm using a flow through, so it won't be as bad. Keep in mind, because you have a non-adjustable gas block here. If you're using a conventional type of suppressor, you'll get a lot of back pressure and a lot of blast to your eyes, because even with that suppressor that I'm using, which is an SLH 762, one of the 6-hour ones, even with that, with a sustained string of fire, I'm getting actually a decent amount of gas to my eyes, which does burn quite a bit. And that's even with eye protection on. You can still get a decent amount of rounds through it like that, and I'm usually not mag dumping. I actually use this a bit for hunting, so I'm usually not going to have a sustained string of fire, and it'll work fine for me, and then it'll be nice and quiet, which is cool. But moving forward to a really, really cool part of this rifle, the handguard itself. So this is an 11-inch handguard. This is a 10.3 barrel Maxim Defense MDX 510. Just by the way that their codes work for all their guns, they have a MDX 508, for example. They have a MDX 505, 510. It pretty much just denotes the barrel length, and then there's kind of concatenating the number. So this is actually a 10.3. It's not exactly 10-inch. So pretty normal barrel length. I didn't want to go shorter than this for a 5.56. 10.3 is already really, really short. But yeah, certainly didn't want to go below it to like an 8-inch or a 5-inch. That would just be kind of ridiculous, and it is viable in some of the other caliber options, but I did want to stick with 5.56 myself just because I have a lot of it stored, and I didn't really want to get into a different caliber just for the costs and the issues of storing all of that extra ammo and all of that, different mags, etc. But going back to the handguard, not to get too distracted. So this handguard is totally compatible with 416s. As I said, the upper receiver is 416 height, and the rail is to spec with 416s, which also means that you have a little tang here, which actually is a little bit hard to see on this rifle, but basically you have a groove for the handguard to fit in, which acts as an anti-rotation tab as well, which I personally think the way that the 416 does it is the most elegant solution to making an anti-rotation handguard, which although I actually quite like this handguard, when I first got this rifle, I was thinking that this looks kind of weird, but it has grown on me quite a bit. But it does present quite an issue if you want to shoot suppressed or change out muzzle devices or anything like that, just because it does shroud the muzzle device pretty much entirely. Did also want to mention really quick, the barrel profile itself is a little bit thinner. It's not the thickest barrel. I like it. It's not overly heavy, doesn't feel overly barrel heavy as a result. And it is, interestingly, made out of 17.4 stainless steel, which I had to do some reading on, saying I don't see a whole lot of barrels made out of that material. From what I can tell, it is a pretty good type of stainless, but it is stainless nonetheless, so keep that in mind. But should be harder than most of the other types of stainless barrels you'll see out there, so it should last a decent amount of time. So last, moving to the muzzle device right here. This ships with their hate brake, as it's called, which is a linear compensator in addition to a muzzle booster to kind of improve reliability. Now, when I first got this, shot quite a few rounds with it on, but I have been switching it out and trying out a lot of different muzzle devices as well, and I haven't really had too many issues with any of them. I've occasionally had some issues with feeding. This does seem to be somewhat undergassed, actually, which is surprising for an SBR. But yeah, my brass is usually kind of going a little bit further back, so does seem to be maybe somewhat short stroking potentially. But I haven't really noticed much of a difference as far as reliability between the different muzzle devices, so I'm not sure if the actual booster effect does a whole lot here as they claim it does, but the linear compensator features of this muzzle device do work really well. So it's not anywhere near as blasty as it would normally be for this short of a barrel, and it does kind of direct all that sound away from you. This is not a suppressor, however, do keep in mind that. So it's still just as loud. And if you are shooting in a indoor range rather than outdoor, this won't be as effective either, just because it's kind of just gonna come right back at you, if that makes sense. But it will still have some of an effect even there. And actually, one other cool thing about this is it is very, very easy to remove. They have a socket here. So if you look right there, you actually have a little square hole right there. And what you can do there is pop in a drive socket, and then you can remove it just right off the front without even having to remove the handguard, which is quite cool. If you don't have one of those on hand, which I do now, but when I first got this I didn't, so I just removed it with a wrench. You do need a pretty large wrench because this is pretty gigantic, but you can get the torque. You can untorque it, pop it off that way, and then just unspin it the rest of the way by hand. Do keep in mind this is a 2-piece muzzle device, so when you do start to loosen it, just kind of hold it on the inside of the cone here. Otherwise they'll separate and you won't really get anywhere when you're trying to unthread it. Personally, for me actually, there are a lot of points on here. There's a lot of good parts on here that I just personally don't like that I am going to be changing out. As I said, handguard is really well made. I can't use my suppressor with this handguard because I need to lock the collar, so I need something shorter as a result. I don't really like this Radian charging handle because it does get snagged on gear a lot. You can see how large this straight up kind of just hooks here with the shape and everything, so they do get snagged quite often. I usually prefer the lower profile rounded types, specifically the government profile. Geissele is by far my favorite charging handle. Works really nicely in my experience. But this is a very good option. The Radian is excellent. It's a really nice charging handle regardless. It just kind of doesn't fit my use case. If you're wondering why I chose this upper when I am planning to replace so many parts, because there is so many different options out there, so why did I choose this when I am going to be needing to replace so many parts? Really, actually, the main reason for that is because I think the fact that this is a HK Handguard compatible upper is really, really cool. A lot of interesting choices there, as I said, where they kind of, seems like they took a lot of inspiration from the 416. And it also was pretty beneficial to me because I am more into HKs. I have a lot of, you know, it makes it easier for cross compatibility with handguards and all of that, which has already proven to be beneficial, because I did need to use this handguard on a different upper that got sent to me fairly recently. So it's just kind of nice, you know, having that parts compatibility, though probably for a lot of people watching, most likely you're going to be more into like ARs themselves as opposed to the HK platform. So maybe that benefit would be lost on you, and maybe you'd want to look at other uppers in that case. But overall, yeah, that's the main reason why I chose this one in specific. It's just kind of, it's kind of cool. And it is a cool platform to build off of, rather than actually building out another 416 with an 11 or a 10-4 barrel. I can kind of go weird directions if I choose to rebarrel this and do all sorts of bizarre and interesting builds. Because there is certainly a lot more options available for like AR barrels as compared to 416 barrels. So let me know if you have any other questions on this MDX 510 or on anything else in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.